What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and this video, I want to talk about Silent Hill 2 Remake yet again, and there was actually some talk today at Gamescom at how long this game is going to be. I like making these videos, especially when it's a game where the original game has already come out, right? And this one is one of the most different ones out there. The length of time it takes to beat this is much longer than the original game, so I want to talk about that in just a second. But let's go to the tweet from Okami. Silent Hill 2 Remake will take roughly 16 to 18 hours for a first playthrough and 20 plus hours for 100% completion, according to Bloober Team. That's compared to 8 to 10 hours for the original, so basically double. Now, I want to say just a few things before we get into well, how exactly could that actually even be? Number one, most times developers overinflate the length of their game. I like looking at what they say, and oftentimes you'll get many developers and many games that you know going in roughly how long. However, what you have to kind of do is take maybe 20 to 30% off of that. And that's just, you don't have to take my word from it. You can go look at what other developers have said, but oftentimes if a developer comes out and says the game's 20 hours, the game is probably in the 15-hour range. That's a little bit more like 25%, I guess, but somewhere in that range. You really try to cut it down just because normally developers do overinflate it. And okay, that's kind of part one to it, right? So when they say it'll take 16 to 18 hours, honestly, immediately I'm going maybe 13 to 15, right? Kind of knock it down by a few. That 8 to 10 hour one, I don't know if he got that from how long to beat. I like how long to beat, okay? But ultimately, as I'm playing more and more games weekly at this point, and a lot of them are actually old games, I try to look at the how long to beat time. I look at a YouTube playthrough time, and I look at my own time. And oftentimes, I don't know who's putting in the numbers to how long to beat nowadays, but those numbers always seem too big. And specifically for Silent Hill 2, if you look, again, I don't know if that's the average of how long to beat on Silent Hill 2, but you can look at YouTube walkthroughs for maybe 5 to 6 hours that it takes to beat Silent Hill 2. Now, those people generally know the puzzles. You know what I mean? Maybe it's their second playthrough or whatever. They kind of know what they're doing. But from everything I've seen, it's been 5-6 hours. I'm actually going through Silent Hill 2 right now, and I'm kind of in line with that. I'm about half an hour slower than a YouTube walkthrough. So I'll look at the time that I'm at. I'll look at a YouTube walkthrough, and I'll be half an hour behind where I quote unquote should be. Right now, again, it's based off of how much exploration are you doing, right? Things like that, which we'll talk about in a second. But just to kind of throw those things out there initially, right? I feel like their numbers are overinflated, and then even the original Silent Hill 2, I don't feel is that long. However, there are multiple endings, right? Actually, several of them, and some of them require very specific things to do in order to get them that can extend the length of the overall game. Another thing to remember for this game in particular is the enhancements or the new parts, right? The new parts of this game now is in the exploration. You think about the actual buildings, as you're walking around town, many of the buildings are locked. Many of, say, the apartments in, the first third of the game or so. Most of the rooms, you could be in a hallway where there's 20 rooms and maybe 4 of them are unlocked, right? I don't know if all of them will be unlocked now, but they have said, and they just said a few days ago, that is a huge element of this game is the exploration. Even different buildings in Silent Hill, a lot of them are going to be accessible now, whether it's just walking through the front door, whether it's breaking a window and kind of vaulting in, right? But you're going to be able to do that, and you couldn't do it, initially. So I don't know. From those numbers, it's literally double. I don't think it's going to be double. I also think it does make sense why this one would be more, because it'll be everything that the original game had, plus if you want to spend an extra 2, 3, 4 hours, exploring other things. And again, what I was saying from the YouTube walkthroughs, if you're watching, the right or wrong person, some people know what they're doing more than others, or some people aren't as exploring as much of others, and obviously they're going to take less time. Regardless, for me, I like talking about it, but it always is quality over quantity. If the game's 8 hours, it's 8 hours. If it's 15, it's 15. It needs to be a good 15. It needs to be a good 8, right? Again, numbers are important. important, especially because when you're buying a game, you want to know how much time you're going to sink into it or how much you're expecting. I completely understand and respect that. But for me, it's like, okay, if it's double, it's double. That doesn't mean it's double as good. It needs to be filled, and it needs to be enjoyably double the time. You know, I mean, if it's double the time and the extra 8 hours is garbage, well, you actually made a worse game because now half of it is bad and half of it is the original. You know what I mean? Just different ways it could go. But ultimately, that is a little surprising because I don't, again, like if you cut into their length and you say, okay, well, they're overinflating it, you get closer to maybe the original length of the original game, and then any extra hours or like the padding or like the exploration stuff, that makes sense to me. If it really is double, then you got to start asking a question of like, are they rework? Because they've talked about the story, and I mean, like, are they going to rework like several parts to it, or, you know, because it didn't ever seem like that. Like, they might take liberties here and there, and, you know, the performance is a little bit different, but I don't need them adding like an extra like Act 1.5. I don't need them to, you know, add that to the game. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.